But I'm Chris Brown, and I'm with the Blair, Cato, Pickering, Casterline law firm in Greenville, actually located in Malden, right near Malden High School. I've been with the Blair Cato firm for just over a year, but I've been practicing in Greenville for over 20, and had the privilege of speaking to this group on at least 2 other occasions over the last several years. So it was nice to be back, and it's nice to see some familiar faces. I am an attorney, and part of my practice has been in estate planning, elder care, probate. But now, more commonly, I just use the term life planning. Because when I sit down and talk with a family, maybe it's a husband and wife, maybe it's a son or daughter with their parents, we're really just talking about life. We're talking about what has changed often in their lives. And for anyone that has experienced an illness within their family, and without asking for a show of hands, I would say that's a lot of you. And as of 3 years ago, I would raise my hand in the fact that for the first time in my life, I had 2 parents. They were aging, but they were aging gracefully, and they were aging independently. And I had never given much thought to being a primary caretaker, but that all changed 3 years ago. My mother's health declined significantly, quickly, and I found myself in a primary caretaker role as a son, not as an attorney, for the first time dealing with life and caring for my mother, and realizing for the first time how all-consuming that could be. And how quickly dealing with an illness to the best of your ability can consume so much of your time that you don't make it a priority to actually sit down and have very crucial conversations with your family about maybe it is your legal documents. Do you have your last will and testament? Do you have power of attorneys? Do you have medical directives? And I'll pause right there just to state on the tables today, since we do have a very limited amount of time and won't be able to answer probably all the questions that you may ask or that you are thinking, I have put 2 of my handouts on the table regarding wills, being one of them, and power of attorneys and medical directives being the other. Both handouts answering many questions that I get from clients almost on a daily basis. So hopefully that will be some beneficial information. If you take 1 per family, I think there will be enough to go around, and I do have a few other handouts if needed at the end of the presentation. Those handouts do represent some of the documents that we discuss with families. Those documents are often on their to-do list, but it never makes it to the top of their to-do list because of everything else going on in their lives. But I caution clients never to delay making those important life decisions for not only them but their family. I'll pose one scenario that when there is an illness in a family, so many people begin to focus on caring for that person, which is very important. But they don't stop and realize how now estate documents that they may have had in place for 10 or 15 years, documents that they had put in place for the husband to care for the wife and the wife to care for the husband, and now one of them, maybe suddenly or due to a prolonged illness, cannot take care of the other one. And how important it may be to revisit those documents. Now, for the first time in your family's life, your children may be called upon to take on that role of primary caretaker for you if your spouse can no longer take care of you if you became ill. So we have a broad range of questions. I ask clients. I say sometimes I do want my meetings with my clients to be provocative. And by that I mean I want it to provoke conversation amongst themselves as a husband and wife, as a son and daughter to their mother and father. Provoke them to ask questions and have crucial conversations that are so important to planning for the future. So important and so much easier to do today than if you wait and try to do it after there has been a diagnosis of an illness. Or often even more challenging when there has been a sudden illness. And you try at that point to prepare when sometimes it is too late to do all of the preparation, whether it be legal documents or other planning that you may need. So I do hope the information is helpful. We will have a Q&A session to be able to answer a few of your questions. And I'm sure all the panelists will be here for a few minutes afterwards. Sometimes people feel more comfortable coming up and asking a question one-on-one. And quite often those questions are personal and they're specific to your family and your situation, and sometimes easier to answer that way. But we will certainly try and do that and make the best use of our time for you while you're here today. Did I run over?
No, you're doing fine.
Okay, good. I was looking to my left to see, but thank you. I think that's enough. Thanks.
Okay. Well, good afternoon. I'm Loretta Hartzell, and I'm with Hartzell & Associates, and my firm or practice has specialized in long-term care planning since '91, and then we gravitated towards Medicare supplement and helping people navigate the Medicaid or Medicare maze, as I call it. And I'm just going to pivot on to what Chris said about planning, okay? And I'm sure you all heard this a long time ago and have seen it, that we take more time planning for a vacation than we do taking care of our legal matters or even our financial matters. And it's interesting, like just yesterday I got a call from a daughter, and her father is 83 years old, and he wants to know if he can get some long-term care insurance. Okay? Now, as I told the daughter, well, first of all, is your father in good health? And then I said, secondly, there aren't a lot of companies out there that are going to insure somebody at 83 if he's in good health. So we're going to look at some other possible solutions. But just as Chris said, things happen suddenly in our lives, and if we're not prepared for those changes, it's a little too late when a crisis occurs or we have a health care matter that comes up that we have to reach out for someone to figure out what we're going to do. And as I tell people, the insurance, when we talk about long-term care specifically right now, is your money pays for it, but your health actually buys it. And you can't wait until you have a problem to figure out what that solution is going to be. And there are lots of different solutions today for planning. We have traditional, we have hybrids, which are combination life and long-term care. So there's a lot more out there than there was before. And just like Chris said, when I sit down with my clients to even review the plans they have in place, I'll ask them, have you put that will together? Do you have that power of attorney when things are going to change? And I know how that is because I lost my mom a few years ago, and my sister had the power because my mom lived up in Ohio. But for the insurance, my sister could write to the insurance company, which is what we did since I'm the insurance person, and I handled all of those questions. So sometimes you have to divide things up in your family. Now when it comes to planning for Medicare, again, there's a lot of different things that people have to be aware of. You know, do you do it when you're turning 65? In most cases, the answer is yes. If you're working beyond 65, do you wait a little bit because you're still working? So again, different things for different people. But the other thing is, you get that insurance policy and you know it, and you never review it. So it's very important to review things from time to time to make sure it is what you still need. And one of the things that I find very interesting is people have done some planning for long-term care. They need help, but guess what? They don't want to activate that policy. You don't know how many times I have worked with people who had something that they could have used 6 months earlier. And here's what I think the reason is, and this is my perspective, is it's hard for us to admit that we need help. It's hard for our family to accept that, and we think we have to do all of the caring. And more often than not, caregivers' health deteriorates, and they may even pass on before the one that needs care. So I encourage people when they call me, because I'm not the claims office, I can't make a decision, but call them and see if you could possibly get some help. And we all want to stay in our homes, and most policy will keep us in our homes, but the other perception I think that people have is, oh, I'm going to have somebody in my home every day. You don't need somebody in your home every day. You don't want somebody in your home every day, but your loved one needs a little bit of break. So don't be afraid to look into what you purchase to help those that you love. I mean, it's still your decision. If you don't want to move forward with it, that's fine, but don't try to be that martyr. And that's what I believe people feel that they have to do because of how somebody else will say something about them. Until somebody's walking in your shoes caring for someone, they have no idea what it's like day in and day out. So if you have policies, don't be afraid to activate them and find out if you could possibly get a little bit of help. And as Chris says, we'll answer all the other questions that you have a little bit later. So I'm going to now pass it on to Bonnie.
Is it on?
Yes, it is.
You know, I wrote down my introduction, even though I know who I am. I like to have it written down. My name is Bonnie Noble Silverman. I'm a social worker and an aging life care professional. So what does that mean? First, a little bit about me. I've lived in the community for 25 years. My husband and I raised our daughters here, who are now grown, and as you can probably, some of you may be able to say, off the payroll. So we're happy about that. And love living in Greenville. I am the owner of an elder care consulting practice called Geriatric Resource Services, and I'm also a visiting social worker with NHC Home Care, and I think I left you things on the tables about both of those places. But in both those worlds, my role is to help families and older adults navigate the way. This esteemed group of professionals are people that I work with all the time because I'm referring to them. And speaking to both of your points about planning, when I'm seeing a family or a person under the home health care benefit or as an aging life care consultant, there is something that has occurred that has upset the balance of things. There's been some medical event or some situation that has caused the family, the adult child, the older adult, to look and step back and say, whoa, I'm going to need some help. I'm not sure where to go. I don't know what to do. Maybe an example to make this humanize it a little bit more would be an adult child that comes home to visit mom and dad, and unfortunately there's dad has a heart attack, goes into the hospital, and then daughter sees that the other spouse has been caring for their spouse all along because maybe there's been some cognitive impairment and they weren't aware of it until they came home. And now dad's in the hospital, mom's at home, she needs a lot more help than I ever thought. Who do I call? What do I do? And it kind of goes back to your points about having conversations. I think the biggest gift we can give our families and our adult children is to sit down and have a conversation about the what ifs. I've heard it said that aging is a human experience, not a healthcare experience. And I think that example of there being a medical event that kind of shakes things up a bit is what occurs. The healthcare experience at aging, suddenly things happen to us when we're older. There is a medical event. Some of us are blessed with good health and kind of ride the journey, and others have to step back and make some adjustments. But when there is that healthcare experience, then aging becomes that, doesn't it? And when I asked about the intention of that statement, aging being a human experience, not a healthcare experience, the intention was that sometimes we miss the opportunity to look at aging as developmental. So it goes back to what you said in the very beginning, Chris, that aging is part of a developmental phase, just like it is when we have our babies. India with her newborn Jackson and making all those plans, well, it continues on, doesn't it? So my role is to help people during those changes in life. And myself, I'm a human being. We're all humans taking care of humans. On a personal note, my mom had passed away 7 years ago. But when she was alive, she lived in an independent living community. And she was very ill. And she needed a lot of support to help her live her best life. Well, I lived 800 miles away, and I couldn't help her do that. So I hired somebody like me. She didn't like that, because it wasn't me. But I found someone just as good to help her kind of figure it out and live her best life with the supports that she needed. So as a social worker, as an aging life care professional, my role is to really help families navigate those waters, help with decision support, advocacy, connection to resources like Chris and Loretta and Cindy to help us live our best life. And I think that's it. I'm happy to entertain any questions later on.
Well, I've got a tough act to follow. My name is Cindy James, and I am a licensed healthcare administrator, among other things. I've been in healthcare for about 16 years, and I'm the current member advocate for the Parkinson's Society. How I landed in this role is because in my 16 years, I've had several roles in healthcare. I've been a hospice executive director. I've been a home health administrator. Again, I'm a licensed assisted living administrator. And right now, the company that I work for, that I've been with for about 10 years, I'm in their physicians arm of the company, I guess you would say. So I know a lot about resources and what's available out there, as even VA benefits. I've been involved with that, with residents of assisted living that we serve. So I have a lot of knowledge about a lot of stuff. I'm certainly not an expert, but I can certainly answer your questions about what this means, what's out there, who pays for what, things like that, as well as Bonnie can too, and other folks. On a personal note, I have lived through the aging process with both of my parents. My father passed away in 2016 at the ripe old age of 91, and he lived until the very last day. But what and my mother is 85 and in great health and still plays golf 3 times a week, and so she's doing great. But what I learned through that experience with my own family is that even though I had been in healthcare and I was pretty knowledgeable, the rest of my family wasn't. And they absolutely panicked when my dad, became ill. What do we do? What do we do? And my family is very typical of every family out there. Unless you're in the whole healthcare world, you really don't know. Can I get a witness? I mean, do y'all not agree that, yeah? unless you're kind of in it, it's very confusing. You don't know what the resources are. You don't know what resources provide what. Sometimes you don't even know what the names mean. So we're all here to try to provide clarity for that today. So there's no dumb or stupid question. Please ask any questions that you have on your heart and mind, because that's really our goal today, is to simplify the aging process and the resources and things that are available to help you live your best life now, to help you give great care to your loved one, and to help you as a caregiver not experience burnout.
Okay, who wants to start? Who has our first question for our panel? Of course. All the way in the back. I'm running, Chad. I'm coming. Do it on here. It helps with the recording.
All right. Oh, okay. Quick question about powers of attorney. Come to find out in past experience that there's not a one-size-fits-all, I guess, power of attorney as it comes to specific roles you may be taking on, dealing with maybe government entities and any other. Is there really a general power of attorney that would give you the ability to speak on your loved ones or whoever's behalf for anybody? My situation I ran into was I was trying to help my mother out, had a general power of attorney for my mother, and Social Security refused to talk to me because I needed a specific power of attorney for that event alone, is what they told me. So I didn't know how you assemble powers of attorney for different obstacles you may run into as you're trying to help somebody.
Well, that's a good question. And I will reiterate, there are no dumb or silly questions, but I cannot guarantee smart answers to every question. I will say that we are finding that Social Security is a good example. Some investment companies, private brokerage companies, are preferring, their legal departments are telling their agents, we want our specific power of attorney signed by our clients, authorizing another family member to speak on their behalf or make financial decisions on their behalf. This is more of a general rule and answer that a general durable power of attorney most often addresses financial, money, and legal related decisions that someone makes for another person. Most attorneys create fairly comprehensive general power of attorneys. They are many pages long, and I have clients look at them and just their eyes get very big. And I explain to them, I realize that some of this authority you may not need, your family may not need on your behalf, but we would like to err on having additional authority in there than possibly restricting that power of attorney and at a later date finding out that additional authority was needed and it wasn't in your power of attorney document. But even with those very comprehensive power of attorneys, we are finding, again, organizations that are wanting their own documentation signed. They're wanting specific power of attorneys. And as the gentleman stated, a specific power of attorney is normally limited to one specific action or a group of specific actions. One example would be if a husband and wife were selling their home and the husband was traveling for business and could not be there the day that they needed to go to the attorney's office and sign the documents to buy or sell their home, the husband could sign a specific power of attorney to his wife to sign that specific set of documents that would then become a null and void POA. It would terminate when those actions had been completed. And that's just one example of a specific power of attorney. But general comprehensive power of attorneys are still, in my opinion, the best general durable power of attorney to have. I'll say, though, it's a very powerful document. there is a lot of authorization that you are granting in a power of attorney, and it's very important that you trust 100% the person that you designate as your agent, that they will always make decisions in your best interest, not in their best interest or their children's best interest, but in your best interest. But most often we do use the general comprehensive POAs. Sure.
I just want to add something to what Chris said about insurance companies and what they require. You should contact the insurance company that you have, whether it be for regular health or long-term care, and find out if they have a specific HIPAA authorization so that your son, your daughter, your spouse can call up the customer service people or the claims people and ask questions. As an agent, I can't even always find out everything about. Once somebody goes on claim, I can know they opened the claim, I can know the claim is closed, I can help somebody if something's not getting done, but I'm not going to always find out specifically information because of privacy rules. And so, I just went to my doctor. They made me fill out the form again. Who can they give information to that's okay? So I put down my spouse and a friend. Same thing with insurance. Pharmacies too. My husband couldn't get some prescriptions for me for a while ago because he wasn't on to pick up that prescription. So find out from the insurance companies what documents they need. Even Medicare. Your spouse can't talk to Medicare unless you've given the government permission.
I just want to say that I several times have helped families initiate a claim for long-term care insurance, and that is exactly the point. We have called the company, they called the company, they got me on the authorized list to speak, and so I was able to help facilitate the completion of the application and find out, when things would be starting. So it can be done. It just requires that you make sure that you identify the people that you're comfortable with handling that in your stead.
And one other thing I'll add, do it before there's a crisis, because when there's a crisis, you're all trying to figure out what's going on. So, and some carriers will require these HIPAA authorizations to maybe be good for only 2 years, and then you have to do it again. But at least you've got something in place.
I got a question, kind of a follow-up. Is there anything we can physically, as the spouse, someone that's given me permission to go ahead and carry with you? I've run into, I've gotten there. Yes, I've got a huge document that I'm not going to carry around in my pocket. And I've gone, for instance, to pick up like an MRI disc or something. I can't get it because even though I have the power of attorney and stuff, I don't have proof to show them. Is there a way that we can have something that literally we can put in a pocket to hand to people at different times, to different places, even though we've given, permission? It's on file someplace, but when you meet with that specific person, like for instance at the hospital or something, they won't give it to you because they don't see that power of attorney, and they have to physically see it.
Well, I agree with you that it can be cumbersome to carry around copies of documents, but I'll tell you, for the last 2 years of my mother's life, I had a file, and I didn't go anywhere with her without that file in my hand. It had her general durable power of attorney, her health care power of attorney, her living will document, and truly handing them a hard copy, letting them hold it in their hand, see it themselves, let them make a copy of it, let them scan it into whatever medical records or other legal records they have in their office, is still a very convenient way. Can those documents be carried on a thumb drive, just a small, either as a means of, but they're not always still as accessible to download and for somebody to view as just having that hard copy in your hand. I tell clients it's important to travel with those documents. especially if you're dealing with a family member with an illness. And even, vacations. It's one thing to deal with an illness at your local healthcare facility, either Greenville Health System or St. Francis Bon Secours, but if you're in California on vacation, you're under a different health system, you're under different state laws and statutes, and having a copy of those documents with your authorization and agents' names on it can be very, very important.
As you were talking about the specific power of attorneys, we have a power of attorney for me to her and her to me, and then to our sons. Do we need to do something stronger for the sons? It's just vaguely, then it goes to the sons. But you're saying these specific ones. Does that need to be more strengthened?
Well, to back up to your first comment that you made, it is very important if you have a power of attorney, in my opinion, to have a substitute person, power of attorney agent listed on that document. Normally, if your primary agent, and in the case of a husband and wife, they are named as each other's power of attorney to make legal and possibly medical decisions for one another. If one dies or one becomes ill and can no longer serve in that role as a power of attorney, normally just a letter from a treating physician that specifically states that this person can no longer serve in a capacity as a power of attorney, or having a copy of a death certificate for that spouse, would allow your child to step in automatically and begin making those types of legal or medical decisions for their parent under that scenario. I don't think there's anything other than they need to be listed in the document. It needs to be specific on when they are to assume that role and responsibility, and then as long as they can provide proper documentation that it is now time for them to serve in that role, they should be able to always act for you. I think we would go back to what Loretta mentioned, and she made a very good follow-up point, that if there is a change of power of attorney, or the person designated to speak for you or act for you, then those organizations, those companies that you have already spoken to, that it is very important that you follow up with them so that they have new documentation and new authorization for the new person that will be standing in for your POA as needed.
I want to say one comment to that, and that is that it kind of goes back to our conversation about planning, and something that I've helped families do before is put together, I'm going to try to remember all 5, but they should come to me, 5 important things. Have them handy, have them in your home, and let other people know where they are. And that is your health insurance cards, your healthcare power of attorney, your general power of attorneys, your medications, your preferred hospitals, your physicians, things that will be important if, God forbid, there's an emergency. And I'm going to give you an example. I was working with a family, lovely couple, who were aging in place, staying in place at home, and unfortunately they were both, their health had really begun to deteriorate. So they had caregivers in the home to assist them. Well, one day I got a call from the caregiver that they both came down with the norovirus. And they were both so sick that she called EMS, and they were so sick they could not tell the emergency people where their health insurance cards were, what their medications were. They couldn't respond, and there was nothing written anywhere. So from that day on, we put together an emergency packet that was right there in the kitchen where family members, neighbors knew, trusted people knew. But because if there is some event that, God forbid, you should get that sick and you don't know You can't even report, what hospital you want to go to, what medications you're on, who your healthcare power of attorney is. They both were each other's healthcare power of attorney, and they were both very ill. So, something of note.
And I just want to add to what Chris said. Life changes, and I'll use my own personal story. My dad died years ago. My mom is already deceased as well a few years ago. But when she had to go into long-term care, we had to send in the power of attorney. Well, guess what? My dad was listed as her first. Well, before they would do anything, we had to send a copy of the death certificate so that my sister could do what she needed to do, which then I wrote a letter so I could be in charge. So when things change in your life, you need to update those documents, as Chris said at the very beginning, so that you make whatever life-changing event happens easier for those that are going to be involved. I mean, luckily, my mother knew where there was a copy of my father's death certificate, and she lived in Ohio, so I wasn't going to be any help to her, So just make sure, when things change in your life, you update those important documents that you do have in place.
I have a question that legal. I was a power of attorney for my brother when he passed away. But as soon as he passed away, I didn't have any response. I did not accept. I could not do anything. I understand that went to the executor of the will. Could you explain that a little bit?
That's a very good point, and a very common misunderstanding is that a power of attorney is only a document that is valid, enforceable. It's a document that can only be used during a person's lifetime. At the moment of death, in the situation of me and my mother, I was my mother's power of attorney for many years. But the moment of her death, that document became null and void. I had no authority to make any legal or financial decisions on her behalf as her power of attorney. At that moment, the authority shifts to who your executor or personal representative is in your last will and testament, or possibly who your trustee is under a trust document that you would have for estate purposes. And it can be the case of someone in a family can be serving as a power of attorney. One child can be the power of attorney, making all decisions for their parents during their lifetime. And then at the moment of death, that mother or father may have appointed another child to be the executor. So literally, in a moment, you have a shift in power, a shift in authority and decision-making within a family. Now, sometimes that's not the case, because the same person that was serving as the power of attorney is the same person named as the executor or personal representative. So there is a consistency in the authority and decision-making. But the power of attorney is only a legally binding, valid, enforceable document while someone is still alive.
I have a question that I get all the time. What is the difference between home care, home health care, in-home care? What are the differences? Why is one medical? Why is one not? Who should they call?
We can both. We can say it. We're going to do it in unison. The words home care and home health care are sometimes used synonymously, but they're very different. Home health care, under the medical model, so think of medical being the key word, is a registered nurse, registered physical therapist, occupational therapist, speech therapist, or social worker that works for a medical home health care agency that accepts Medicare or private insurance to provide short-term intermittent care. So you've had a knee replacement. You went to the hospital, then you went into rehab maybe for a little while. Now you want to continue with your therapy at home, but it's too taxing of an effort for you to go back and forth to outpatient therapy. So while you're in that transition of getting stronger, we're going to get medical home health care in the home to be the eyes and ears for the doctor and the therapist, and to help you gain strength until you're able either to get back to baseline or go on to outpatient. So that's the medical part. Does that make sense for home health care? You want to talk about in-home care?
Sure. Home health, what Bonnie was just talking about also, you can't just call up and order it. It has to be ordered by your physician. It has to be a doctor-ordered service. And normally your physician will order it, just like Bonnie said, if you've been sick or you've just come out of the hospital, they will order home health to come to your home to try to get you better, stronger, faster, so that you don't return to the hospital. I get a lot of questions about needing help in the home. You can ask your doctor, hey, I would like some home help. He's going to have to approve it and write an order for it. The other type of care in the home you could get is you probably hear this term all the time, home care. Home care. There's a lot of companies, especially in the upstate, we're very blessed. There are a lot of companies that offer in-home care. It's non-medical traditionally. Now, some companies will have a nurse on staff, but basically these services are non-medical. This is your sitter to sit with you while your caregiver goes to the grocery store. This person is going to help you maybe bathe or dress. This person will help you run errands for you. They may clean. They may do light housekeeping, cooking, things like that. This service you pay for out of your pocket, okay? This is just, you call them up, you say, yeah. Typically you'll pay for it out of your pocket, and I'll let Loretta talk about insurance and other benefits that may help pay. But typically you would call up that home care service and say, hey, I'm Miss Smith. I'm looking for help for my husband, 3 days a week, 2 hours a day. And you talk with them about your needs, and they'll put together a plan for you, what you can afford and what it meets your needs for your family and your situation. As far as in-home non-medical care, again, you can pick up the phone and get that. All right, that's just you calling the different services and finding out what they offer. Loretta's going to talk about how insurance can help cover that. But also, if you are a veteran, the VA aid and attendance benefit can help cover in-home care. And you can go to your local VA office here in Greenville. What's her name, Jane? Jan Red. Yeah. But anyway, you can go there and bring your DD-214, your discharge papers, and they can help you navigate that process, and they can even tell you if they think you would qualify for that benefit, because there are some financial restrictions and health restrictions. But the VA aid and attendance benefit for veterans helps pay that. Also, the Alzheimer's can help cover that, part of that. Also, the Alzheimer's Association has vouchers sometime that they can provide to help pay for some in-home temporary care. So there are things out there that can help cover that in-home care that you would just pay for out of your pocket. All right, Loretta.
I'm really glad you said about the physician thing. That's the key. A physician's order drives the medical home health care benefit.
And just to give you that Alzheimer's number here in Greenville, it's 250-0029. And you would just call them up and say you want to know about the respite care. And then they'll give you, and it's not means tested, but the voucher is typically good for only about 6 months, so you really do have to use it. But as Cindy was saying regarding insurance and what insurance with the long-term care will pay for in-home services, most long-term care policies are going to have a waiting period called an elimination period, and it depends on, it could have 90 days, 30 days, 60, 100 days. So as I said in my brief introduction, I find sometimes people are reluctant to ask about getting some home care and they need it. Well, if their policy has a 90-day wait, they're not going to get any, they're going to have to pay those out-of-pocket expenses for the first 90 days. So it's important to find out, can I get my claim started? Because it doesn't happen overnight. You know, the insurance company's got to get documentation sometimes from your doctor, and they sometimes will send somebody out to write up a plan of care. So it doesn't sort of just, you know, you make a call and everything happens. And to give you a prime example, I had a client call me up. His wife has ALS. And he says, I want to get the ball rolling on this so that when I really need the care, I have it in place. So I said, well, it doesn't actually work that way. I said, first of all, let's figure out if your wife could get a claim open, and I'll go through what questions I know the insurance company is going to ask. And they clearly need help right now because he's doing a lot of things for her, like assisting her with her bathing, helping her get dressed. Because your long-term care policies have these activities of daily living. They're bathing, dressing, toileting is help with personal hygiene, going to and from the bathroom, transferring, continence, and lastly, eating means being able to get food in your mouth once it's been prepared for you. Depending on when the policy was written, it could be 2 out of 5, 2 out of 6, or it's a cognitive issue. So clearly, he needs help right now because he's doing a lot of things. So I really encouraged him to call, get the claim going, and I said, look, just get help in there 1 day a week. You won't be spending a lot of your benefit, but then when your wife's needs increase even more, you'll have everything in place because you just can't open up the claim, get it approved, and then do nothing because the companies are going to close them out after 60 days. So you need to do this stuff so it's all in place when you really need all the help. I can hear you.
You were talking about a little bit about long-term care policies. I've been reading lately that there are not too many insurance companies that have them available anymore. And the reason being, the ones that do have them, their projected return on their investments are falling far short of what they projected them to be. Consequently, they're having to jack these premiums up, and to a point where many people that have been paying in for so many years, they can't afford to keep them. Can you address that and just give us your opinion?
Be more than happy to. First of all, yes, the number of carriers today that offer what we call standalone long-term care, these are policies that have been around for over 30 years, maybe even close to 40 now. The number of carriers that are in that market has drastically changed over the years. So there's a handful, and they're still good policies, will address the needs you have. In addition to that, there are these newer solutions that have come out that are called hybrid products or combination products. This is a life insurance-based product with a long-term care rider. So the basic difference between the two is with your standalone, 9 times out of 10, they're not going to give you any kind of benefit unless you need care. So you paid a premium like you've done on your homeowners, your car, your health insurance, and you were lucky enough to die and not need any care, just like the house never burned down, okay? Now, the hybrids, what attracts people to them today is you have to be willing to reposition your assets because if you don't have anything, you're basically the insurance company. And so those products, because they're life insurance based, have the death benefit. So now, if you need long-term care, it's there for you. If you don't need long-term care, then whoever you named as your beneficiary is going to get whatever that death benefit might be. Now, to address your issue about premium increases, I wish I didn't have to deal with them every day, okay? And I do. I mean, I talk to clients every day who have gotten a letter about their premiums going up. So why is that occurring? To give you the fundamentals, and I'll try to make it as brief as possible, when insurance companies actuarially price that product, they made certain assumptions. And one of the assumptions they all made, it doesn't matter who the carrier is, they all made the same assumption that after so many years, you, the policyholder, would voluntarily lapse your policy. And they basically all thought that they would lose about 5% of that book of business. So as it aged, 5% would drop off, and then they wouldn't have that liability on their books any longer. Well, reality is it's less than 1%. So, you're getting older. As we get older, needs are increasing. Secondly, ever since 2008, when we had the, downturn and interest rates have plummeted, that also affected the insurance company's rate of return, because again, they were actuarially assuming a certain percentage of interest that they were going to earn on the premium that you're paying. So because of such low interest rate environments, and it's affected all of us, let's face it, not just the insurance companies, that has caused them to have to increase premiums. Now, when a carrier increases premiums, they always give you options, okay, on how to modify that plan in order to find something that's still going to fit into your budget. And what I will tell you, most carriers are going to give you options that are in their best interest. Remember, it's the insurance company. So you need to contact your agent and find out what other options might there still be for me, because the carrier's not going to show you all of them. And you can sometimes find things that are going to work maybe a little bit better than what they gave you. And I wish we weren't having premium increases, because it's no fun from an agent's point of view to sit down with someone and try to figure out, we thought we put together the right plan, and we did put together the right plan, but other things in our environment has caused all of these things to occur.
And we have time for one. Oh, here we go. Last but not least.
Once you've been diagnosed with a illness like Parkinson's or you can't get long-term care. Is that available on this hybrid policy? Can you get it through that or not?
Probably not. It sometimes, I would say probably not, but sometimes there's some of what we call new short-term health care policies that address long-term care, so it would be a matter of, and I don't know off the top of my head, but you're absolutely right. When there's certain illnesses, you're not going to be able to find anything. And I will say, standalone long-term care underwriting is completely different than the hybrids. And what I mean by that is on the hybrid, they're being underwritten in two fashions: from a life insurance, mortality, versus morbidity, or maybe I said that backwards. So they're being underwritten both ways. And to give you a prime example, I was working with someone a few years ago, and she had breast cancer, and I knew all the questions to ask about how many lymph nodes, what's your treatments, from the standalone. And I thought, well, okay, she'll be okay there. But she didn't want that. She wanted the hybrid. And never dawned on me, okay, that their underwriting with that breast cancer was going to not make her available for 10 years. Completely different. So, as an agent, we sometimes will go back to the underwriting departments at these carriers, because they're always changing things too, and you can't stay on top of everything, but you do your best.
Thank you all so much for all of your answers. And certainly for your time, just spending the time here with us. And Chris had mentioned at the beginning, if you have more personal questions, if you'd be available for a few minutes after. Everyone also has materials on the tables, and there's folders in the front to please take on your way out, because I'm sure you don't remember everything that was said today. So that would be of some help.